Welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host 𝙒𝙖𝙦. Joining me is my co-host 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝘀𝘀. This is DGI-411. I apologize that we could not do it on the expected date. 𝙒𝙧ji was traveling, but he's now settled. The bear is playing golf, and all is well with the world of 𝙒𝙧. 𝙒𝙧ji, namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar and good morning, good evening, late good evening to some of you, and wonderful to be back.
𝙒𝙧ji, G20 meeting, finance ministers meeting. The interesting thing I observed there is all the countries except China condemned Russia. What did they condemn Russia for? Was the Russian finance minister also present, sir?
No, Russian finance minister is not present, was probably present. I can't confirm. I think that basically there's a consistent theme is basically make every attempt to see the Russian actions are condemned at all G20 and all major global forums, be it United Nations, be it G20 leaders meet, or be it G20 finance ministers meet. They are, they are fairly vehement in terms of taking this position. Eventually, the language was watered down, which is effectively to say that they are not supportive of Russian actions. But some of the nations were quite vocal in their condemnation. And as far as China is concerned, China is, at least at the present, looks like an all-weather ally for Russia. So they abstained and they objected to the language as well for G20.
And viewers, we are going to show you some new groupings that appear to be forming again in the world. And we'll touch upon that in our course of this conversation. But first, we wanted to tell you that instead of having your question asked and answered here, what we are thinking of doing is to open, 𝙒𝙧ji and I will come on Twitter Spaces and have a dialogue where you just don't ask one question. You can even have follow-up questions. You can listen to us. We will talk to you back and forth. It's a much more interactive session that we are planning to do. But for that, if you do not have a Twitter account, you do need to create one Twitter account. You can have an avatar in case you are concerned about, your name being the Twitter holder. You can create your own avatar. And then that avatar, you need to create a Gmail account. And from that, you can become a member. My 2 cents is, please don't miss this opportunity. 𝙒𝙧ji and I will be coming. We are going to try and do at least once a week, maybe 1 to 2 hours. So it will be a fairly detailed discussion about what is happening during that time. So let's move on. Thanks for listening to me patiently. Do like this video because we are trying to make this thing more interactive, more interesting, more inclusive. That's the whole point, more inclusive. Rather than you just read something and, or listen to us and go away. We want you to go to the depth also yourself. So let's move on to the next news item. 𝙒𝙧ji, markets. Markets took a dive this week in United States, and everything points to higher inflation, and in higher inflation resulting in recession. Sir, how do you see it, sir?
Well, I think the Fed numbers and the PCE numbers came higher. Fed's internal minutes revealed that the inflation is still hanging out there. The PCE numbers, this is the personal consumption expenditure number, showed an uptick of 0.4%. The January to January numbers was around, I think, 4.7% relative to last year. So all this points out to that the current strategy of rising rates is still not clamping down the inflation. And I think we have repeatedly made this observation. The supply chain issue remains a big issue out in the horizon. The prices are not going to come down if you have domestic, local supply chain issues, and if you have global supply chain issues in terms of any types of produce coming in. It cannot be attributed to the oil prices because the oil prices have been fairly stable in that 74, 75 to 83 bracket between Brent and West Texas crude.
And viewers, there is a new 12-point peace proposal from China, and I think it has not been accepted well. But let me let 𝙒𝙧ji expand on that. What were the 12 points, sir? Why is it appearing to be dead on arrival?
Well, I think first and foremost, they're saying that Russia will keep the territories that it has occupied. So that's number one. So forget Crimea. The rest of all the current things, that 20% which Putin is attributing to, they would keep it. There will not be unilateral sanctions against any nation. There will be dialogue. There will be prisoners of war swap. There will be grains, blah, blah, blah. All the usual stuff that you can talk about. That. Oh, by the way, they also should be the current economic or the prior economic and national or international arrangements should prevail. This is going back to Russia's security arrangement, energy security arrangement, which has been progressively watered down with the Europeans. So China is putting a proposal which is basically a win-lose situation, whereas the West is demanding complete and unilateral withdrawal from all occupied territories. That includes Crimea. That again is dead on arrival, because there has to be some kind of a compromise between the two nations. And because the proposal has been given, there is including United Nations and including many other members of the United Nations have said that the Chinese proposal will not fly.
Sridharji, looks like Biden has sanctioned another $2 billion. Sir, which magic hat does he have, sir, from where he seems to be able to take out and give? I can't even get $1 loan, sir. It is so hard to get one.
We have to host a show from Ukraine with Zelensky. Then you will get plenty of money, Sriji, as one of the advocates. So you will have special sanctions. We'll have special sanctions for PGurus, which is the advocate of Zelensky. So I think the ways he have, he doesn't, he's sanctioning money, recognizing that he will do something in the defense budget. He will ask Department of Defense to shrink some of its supplies and current US supplies to be sent to Ukraine. This is the strategy that he's adopting. Now, GOP and even his own Democratic Party members are shouting, we need money domestically, number one. Number two, what is the audit process that this money is all being purposefully spent by the Ukrainian regime? So we are spending money that we don't have. We are spending money knowing that's all going to be blown away. We are spending money and committing money that we don't have, Sriji. But Biden is very good at that.
Well, viewers, you may have read about the story of 𝙒𝙖𝙤𝙥𝙥 Banga becoming the chairman of World Bank. And World Bank has a annual budget of about $100 billion. And the World Bank has estimated that it will take $340 billion to reconstruct Ukraine whenever that phase starts. Sridharji, your good friend Ajay Banga is now the chairman of World Bank.
Indeed, my ex-colleague, ex-city banker, and wonderful man. And he had great success at Citibank, long-term Citi banker. Then he moved to MasterCard and became chairman CEO of MasterCard and ran a very, very successful MasterCard business. He was a partner of one of the private equity firms. And lo and behold, Joe Biden called him and said, you are the right man to head World Bank, and you have a lot of experience in India, and you have done a lot of developmental. Citi has participated. You understand that market both from Citibank perspective and from a MasterCard global perspective. So who better than yourself to lead the organization? Actually, it's a great honor for him to be part of it, and he would do a pretty good job given the whole bureaucratic structure that is prevalent within the World Bank. But congratulations to Ajay.
Viewers, I don't know how many of you have been following this. The outgoing World Bank president's chairman, whatever you want to call him, he kind of got into a bit of a tangle on climate change. And it is hoped that Banga would soothe some ruffled feathers and kind of steady the ship a little bit. And one of the primary, I think, dissenters about what World Bank wanted to do was India. So Biden has very cleverly chosen an Indian American now, and he says hopes that whatever the concerns that the Indian government had may be assuaged easily by 𝙒𝙖𝙤𝙥𝙥 Banga. We wish him all the best. And Sridharji, let's move on to the next item, sir. There's so many things that we need to talk about. The west of Western Europe also is beginning to think about helping Ukraine, isn't it? I mean, this 2 billion is not the only thing. The Western Europe also is planning on giving them economic and armaments.
So EU has committed both economic package, reconstruction package, as well future reconstruction package, current economic package, as well as the military package. In the meeting, this is the dichotomy. You have the French president, which we covered, and as well as the German chancellor. Last Wednesday they met in Paris, coordinated with Mr. Zelensky on how to coordinate and orchestrate the aid in terms of military aid, and how EU needs to coordinate and source armaments to give it to this. And then you have, at the same time, they're talking to the Chinese, they're talking to the Indians in terms of the peace negotiation. I recognize you have to stop one and focus on the other. If you keep both the things going, I don't think there's any kind of result. So EU has committed significant amount of resources, and they are also committed to preserve the sovereignty of Ukraine. So there's no doubt about it, Sriji.
Now, Belarus's president is planning on visiting China on the 28th of February, just a few days from now. So, Sridharji, do you see the new axis forming, sir? Belarus, Russia, China, perhaps some other countries also?
Well, I think the Eastern European, some of the Eastern European countries, maybe Hungary, maybe another one. So you may see some bloc which is aligning with Russia and China in that axis on the European front. So it's very clear you are seeing that. I think Shevchenko is going to Russia, to China to say, look, we are fully behind. We need aid because we got all these people kind of coming in. Because you remember, Belarus economy is in deep waters. They've had a lot of refugees and other kinds of issues. It's been what you call monotheistic government there. The one guy supported by Russia running the thing. So I think he's not only going for the aid, he's probably carrying some message and saying, in case I am attacked, I need support as well. So it's very clear that he's going with that message. Otherwise, there's no sense of urgency. We may not have mentioned this as part of the plan that Vladimir Putin announced, or secretly, or whatever it is that the documents reveal, that one of the first countries that Russia will take in its expansion to regain the old Soviet Union is Belarus.
Yes, indeed. We have been hearing about Moldova being on their plans, plus the Scandinavian countries. It's a lot. There is a lot of stuff being talked about. And I think this is perhaps the reason why the United States says we have to make a stand in Ukraine so that these guys don't start, dreaming up the same USSR dreams. So fair enough, sir. Let's take a look at the G20 Nations Summit. PM Modi asked G20 nations to focus on the most vulnerable sections of the society. And Indian PM Modi says he's willing to help to bring about resolution to Russia-Ukraine conflict. Sir, already you had your good friend Naftali Bennett go, 8 months ago? And then now you have Xi Jinping carrying. And I guess Narendra Modi probably will be also having his own version of what to do. With the two parties, are they sufficiently weakened that they want to stop fighting? What does your gut tell you?
My gut feel is that United States and Ukraine will negotiate from a position of strength. They are not in a position of strength right now because they are not winning. They have thwarted, they have stalled progress. Russia is not prepared to negotiate. Russia believes the current mobilization of forces to again go after the East, if they have a decisive victory in East and they take over, they believe then they can exert authority in terms of what they want out of this if there is a negotiation. If there's no negotiation, they will continue to march on. So either side is not in an advantageous position, so they will continue to carry their respective battles, Sriji.
And we hear that Russia is getting ready to launch a major offensive, and Ukraine says that we are ready and we are actually going to win this war. So a fair amount of, tough talk on both sides. We have to wait and see how this plays out. Of course, Ukraine may have some new battle tools, access, arms and so on. We don't know how much time it takes to train the troops. For example, They're getting the Abrams tanks, and they're also getting the Leopard tanks. I don't know what is the training involved in those things. These are all fighting in the plains in the east. Donetsk region is one of those things. Lugansk is the other one, and parts of southern, even region south of that. So very, very tough situation for Ukraine, because it's I don't know what to say, sir. This can go on. I don't see any end to this. Now you're also seeing, yeah, this is the last point and I'll stop. US is putting an embargo on 200 companies who might be selling even things like refrigerator, iron, any small electronic appliance, because they think that Russia is actually pulling chips off of these things and putting it in their other weaponry because they need chips. I find that really hard to believe, sir. These things are not so easy to pull off of one PCB and put it on another one and hope to make it to work. Your thoughts? We both were engineers at one point of time.
My thoughts are to say that I think US wants to punish Russia in many ways. I just was recently in India. It's quite amazing that the amount of Russian tourists who come, and they're able to freely exchange the US dollars and take US dollars or euros wherever they go, and they have cash. So when you have cash and you can spend. So there's quite a bit of that activity also that is going on. So my view is that it is not focused on pulling the chips and putting it into some sophisticated equipment, but I think it's more to make the people of Russia suffer and make sure that nothing reaches Russia, because Russia imports quite a bit of this from overseas. So that's what is going on. But Russians know how to get stuff. They can get from the other side. China is abundant producer, with import substitution taking place by India, which otherwise was getting this stuff from China. Now they have a perfect opportunity to give all this to the Russians and the Belarus,
Sriji. So true, sir. So true. Now, German Chancellor holds wide-ranging discussions with Prime Minister Modi and promises to personally oversee the conclusion of EU-India Free Trade Agreement in 2023. So let's talk about this, and then I want to ask you also about the UK-India FTA. Please go ahead, sir.
Well, I think that they agreed that the EU agreed that they will finalize this in 2023, if you recall. They said 2022 time was too short. So now they are very keen to wrap this up. And they're very keen to wrap it up for two reasons. One, they see this as an alternate supply chain, number one. Number two, they also see this as a route for them to pursue into the broader Indo-Pacific and global South. They see India as a conduit. So they see this relationship with India is what they call China plus one. So which is namely, as they slowly substitute China, I think India is their strategic partner in their pursuit of their trade agenda so that their domestic economies don't suffer, Sriji.
Sir, one way to do these things really well is to have some sort of a worker visa arrangement for Indian nationals to come work in the EU or in the United Kingdom, so that it's an elastic thing where you can adjust it based on your supply-demand situation, so that at least they have an alternative to what they thought was a crisis in terms of refugee population.
There's a number of people going to EU, Sriji. There's a number of people now. You go to Holland, you have a lot of people. You go to Frankfurt in Germany, you have a lot of people from India, a lot of IT people working. On the main strand engineering side, you have a lot of, I think I'm told that there's more than 1,200 to 1,400 German companies already investing and operating in India. And many of these people go to Germany for training, and many of them are, German speaking and German trained, so they know very well. So I think this visa stuff is happening. Actually, in 2023, EU may be performing much better relative to, for example, US. So you may see this onward migration into Europe during the, commencing from around this phase, if it has not already started, Sriji.
Thank you very much, sir. And let's take a look at India's push to regulate cryptocurrencies It is getting support from IMF and the United States at the G20. And the US Treasury Secretary calls for India's inclusion in friend-shoring strategy to develop better alternate supply chains and trade routes. Again, the same thing that you mentioned, sir. US is singing the same tune.
Well, first Biden came and sang that the tune that India is an undisputed and an inseparable partner. Then you had Chuck Schumer come and say that. Now you have Anthony Blinken say that. Now Janet Yellen is saying India is what you call the most trusted, most rule-based. They have a strong fiscal financial discipline. It's a country that we have to rely on. So this concept of friendshoring is those countries which are hostile to China, very similar to aligned with West. They're saying, even if we don't have, let us see how we can bring them on board to be part of the procurement process. It's a new strategy that Janet is. I think she is doing what the Biden administration, in a fiscal context, has not done, which is what she's trying to do, which is to augment the supply chains so that the prices can come down. Well, let's see how they execute it, because it is good if they can execute, Sriji. That's the question mark.
And Anthony Blinken to meet his Quad counterparts on the sidelines of the G20 meet on March 3rd as tensions rise with China. So now this year, India is going to see a series of G20 meetings. And I was at a meeting where some state officials were there in Silicon Valley, Sridharji. 200 plus cities are going to be involved in these G20 meetings in India. 200.
Wide socialization and what you call showcasing of India as the future for trade, commerce, and manufacturing. I think that's what is going on. With whole emphasis on infrastructure and significant amount of money being put into infrastructure, the question of India not having infrastructure will be addressed as these people navigate around. So I think India is using this G20 as a great opportunity to showcase to the world. It also held the Global South meeting, and now it's holding the G20 meeting. I will not be surprised if it also held the United Nations, a subcommittee meeting of United Nations. So it clearly, is showing the world that it means business, and it has now evolved and matured, and it is an economy to be reckoned with.
It is a very interesting piece of news. India's indigenous fighter aircraft lands in UAE to participate in a multilateral military exercise with air forces from UAE, France, Kuwait, Australia, the United Kingdom, Bahrain, Morocco, Spain, the Republic of Korea, and the United States. Sridharji, I had another guest come on my show and predict that by 2029, India might be doing much more of the security, keeping of UAE. I don't know if this is going to happen or not. I seek your thoughts, sir.
I endorse his views. I support his views that the security umbrella, not just for UAE, but UAE, Oman, and Bahrain also will be the security apparatus will come from India. India has a very trusted relationship with UAE. There's a significant amount of Indians in UAE. Similarly in Oman, and then as US says, you need to take care, and Bahrain, because Bahrain is very critical within the context of all the energy installations that are just right across the water on the other side in Saudi Arabia. Yes, that is what. But the very important point here is this is almost a 2 weeks what they call desert sands exercise that's happening. If you look at the line of countries that have come up, pretty much around that region and plus from outside the region. Why? Because the reason is there are two important things. One, should there be an Iranian flank that open up as part of that nexus, then that particular group is well trained and well orchestrated to address the issue. Plus, that's also an area of a lot of still this rebels or terrorists or whatever you want to call around that region. Second, that's also an important point from which, in case there is an attack on Taiwan, to launch a backup contingent from that part of the world. So this exercise is very, I mean, looking at the number of countries that we listed, the countries and the exercise that is being conducted is very significant, Sriji.
Thank you, sir. And now for the most fascinating news of the day. Asia. Did Chinese Air Force intercept US aircraft in South China Sea amid growing tensions? Sir, I thought it was over China, but this is in South China Sea. These guys intercepted. I think they pushed off the US aircraft, didn't they?
I think it's, if I'm correct, it's one of these small naval planes. Yes, it is a naval plane. It's a P-8 flying outside the Chinese airspace. It was not flying in Chinese airspace, but it was outside the Chinese airspace in South China Sea. Let's be very clear, in South China Sea. So one of the Chinese, I think J-11 aircraft came almost 500 feet close to the wing because this plane would not nudge and would not go. Notwithstanding the fact it came 500 feet to the wing of the plane, the P-8 went through its orbit, completed, and went back to where it came from in the South China Sea. So the fact that this has happened and the Chinese aircraft came is a reflection of two things. There is silent stuff that is going on in South China Sea. Number one, very similar to what happened during the 2008-2016 period, it is now alleged that China is trying to claim territory of several uninhabited islands in that part of the world. All you need to do is look at South China Sea, look across and look at Indonesia, look at Malaysia, look at several parts, and then look across to the other side, between Myanmar and going all the way up to Thailand on the one coast, and then to Laos and Cambodia on the other side. There's a lot of spaces. So what they're trying to do, just as Spratly Islands was occupied during that period, they're trying to occupy uninhabited spaces. Now I ask the question, where is Quad? Quad is supposed to be the enforcer of rules in Indo-Pacific or in the South China Sea as well. Where is Quad? They're only having subtle little meetings, but these are sporadic incidents, but there may be much more than what we think is going on, Sriji.
And now Taiwan Air Force spots a Chinese weather balloon over North Taiwan. Is it a weather balloon or is it something else? In a simulated exercise conducted by Japanese forces in a joint war with China over Taiwan, the conclusions are that the allies will suffer significant damages but will prevent China in its mission. So these are two big topics. I would like you to weigh in on them, and then we have a couple more things before we wrap.
I think let me talk about the second topic. The second topic is that this is what you call as the Special Forces of Japan. They conducted a simulation exercise with the naval fleet, as well as this is effectively an air war. A significant amount of US and Japanese planes involved in this war to thwart, obviously jointly with Taiwan protecting its territory, and China. They felt that there will be at least somewhere between 400 to 700 aircraft lost by the Allies, incurring significant kind of losses, but they will thwart China based on the current strength. So this is what the simulated exercise. So which means they're working their way. At least Japan is working and trying to figure out what happens if China further strengthens it. It's a simulation. China has never been war tested, so it remains to be seen. But the fact that this research is now out in the public shows that they're taking it seriously. As far as the balloon is concerned, China always says, oh, it's a weather balloon, it's a weather balloon. I think that they are completely navigating Taiwan to pick every spot that they can think of. Picking in every spot is one thing, but doing a war is another thing, and occupying and trying, this is not Hong Kong. I think China must remember, Hong Kong was given to China, and then China put its oppressive measures in place. Taiwan will kind of resist. So we will cover more on Taiwan on our next DGI, but I just want to respond to these two things that she asked.
Thank you, sir. And Taiwan is going to be pushing for its president participation in future APEC meeting, that is Asia Pacific. What is economic community? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Asia Pacific Economic Community. So I think that what he's saying is that we were illegitimately stuck out. Now give us the space so that we have legitimacy. Now, for the first time, or more openly for the first time, Taiwan is saying we are a sovereign nation. They're saying we are a sovereign nation. We need representation.
Yes, indeed. And lastly, Myanmar extends its junta rule and also increases its crackdowns. Sridharji, what is wrong with this country, sir? I mean, ever since it became independent from British in 1948, I mean, they hardly had any democracy, isn't it?
Hardly have had any democracy. Certain countries ruled by the juntas. They would like to prefer the status quo. They like to prefer the control. I think the ASEAN did a very good thing. They said keeping him inside reform is better. Keeping them outside, will not solve the problem. But they are trying very, very hard to see whether they can bring it mainstream. Indonesia and Thailand have been working hard. Singapore has been working hard. So let's hope that eventually, good sense prevails.
Thank you so much, Sridharji. And that brings us to a close of today's edition of DGI. Please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to become a member on Twitter so that you can join Twitter Spaces. Because once you become a member of Twitter, you need to do one more step, by the way. You need to follow at PGurus1. That is our official handle that you can see here. And you can see it on the screen here. Then that will give you the rights to, whenever we are holding spaces, you will get a notification and then you can join it. And then essentially you're talking as if it's a multi-people telephone call, and we can all talk and have questions and answers answered. And Sridharji is willing to give the gift of his time to be on this, to interact with you even more. But most importantly, you need to become a member of Twitter. Second, you have to follow PGurus channel. Thank you very much, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday. We'll see you back on Monday.